your body remembers everything your mind tries to forget. On Soul Sparks today, with your host Saima, we sit down with Dr. Evette Rose, renowned author of 21 books, holistic counselor, and speaker who has spent decades unraveling the intricate ties between trauma, emotion, and the body. Her work in metaphysical anatomy dives deep into the silent imprints of our past and how they echo through our health. So, if you have ever felt like that healing isn't just about the physical, this is the conversation your soul's been waiting for. So, Evette, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here with you today to share a powerful message for everyone.
Yes, it's incredible to have you here, Evette. It's my pleasure to have you here. So, Evette, like, you have written extensively about how unresolved emotions shape our health. So, I'm really curious to know that what was the moment in your own journey that made this connection undeniable for you?
That's a really great question. At first I thought it was my anger towards my father. We had a very disruptive relationship, and the injustice and the stress and just all the unspoken words that I had with him really built up over the years. And it made me a very frustrated person, if I could say. And But the real truth of the power of my emotions really became evident to me just before I turned 30 when I had broken heart syndrome. And that's a stress induced heart attack. And I was absolutely shocked to my core when that happened to me. I was thinking, how can it happen to me? I am teaching how people how to help themselves, how to deal with their emotions, how to deal with their challenges. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
practicing these tools on a daily basis. How can this happen to me? A big part of the wake up call was apart from negotiating for my life was when I was lying in the hospital bed and the doctor and this happened when I was in a third world country and the doctor came into my room and he just threw a box of white pills on my bed and he looked at me really irritated. Like you could see he was just not in the mood to practice that day. And he said, Yvette, you don't have a heart problem. You have a goddamn stress problem. And then he walked out. And the words felt like it echoed through me because I was still in so much disbelief how I got there. And then to hear that from the doctor, I'm thinking, this is not my life. Maybe I was in a car accident, maybe I'm hallucinating, but this really truly was my life. That is exactly what had happened. And so what triggered the heart attack was actually the passing of my beloved dog, believe it or not. But that wasn't the only cause. That was the final trigger point. So my relationship, a significant relationship at the time, was already falling apart. I was working incredibly hard. I was riding off of what's called eustress, right? It's positive stress. So it feels good, but there's still a lot of cortisol involved, a lot of adrenaline involved that's not healthy over a long period of time. And this was also my suppressed anger that came out in this energetic way of just trying to, you know, utilize everything in a constructive way, but it still had a very destructive effect on my health and on my body. And my body in that moment just said, stop. And I realized, and I was talking to my body, I'm thinking, but I've been working with you all these years, I've been listening to you. And what I realized my body was telling me is that I need you to listen to me in a different way. I need you to listen to me in a way that makes more sense to me rather than what you think the issue could be, right? Because sometimes we try to apply a solution to a problem, but because we don't understand the problem that well, we always end up applying in some most cases the wrong solution to a problem. And then we always find ourselves going back to square one, doing things all over again. Or we feel like, wow, but I've healed this. Why am I healing this again 1 year later? Right. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I found myself in that hamster wheel and I realized that really big changes needed to take place. It's not just a matter of saying all the right things, saying all the right affirmations, doing your daily routines and health checkups and health routines and exercise and yoga and whatnot. It's internal work as well. And there was a big part of me that wasn't ready to really truly address what needed to be addressed in order to live my best life. And my body pushed back, and it pushed back hard. And I have an incredible amount of respect for the human body now, because to go through an event that's so incredibly powerful that nearly takes your life because of emotions, it really puts the power, or places the power of emotions in a completely new perspective, and an unforgettable perspective. So that was one of my biggest introductions to the power of emotion, and especially unresolved emotions.
Mm-hmm. First of all, like Dr. Evett, thank you for, sharing that personal moment. And it's one thing to study or write about the impact of stress on health, but it's entirely another to experience it firsthand in such a profound and life altering way as you did. And like hearing how your body, signal that something deeper was going on really brings this topic to life.
Yeah. I mean, it's so incredibly important because people don't always appreciate the power of emotions. I mean, when
Mm-hmm.
you look at let's look at irritable bowel syndrome. It's not really a medical ailment recorded in the medical literature. It's a psychosomatic condition. The same for stomach ulcers. I mean, stomach ulcers is a condition that actually has an opening wound inside your stomach that can even lead to stomach cancer. And yet they don't classify it as an actual ailment. They say it's psychosomatic. What does that tell you? Emotions are behind these conditions. And now what makes this even more fascinating is that these conditions, especially irritable bowel syndrome, can be inherited. So what you're telling me is that an emotional blueprint can actually be inherited that causes a medical ailment. Wow. Well,
Mm-hmm.
what does that actually say? If you really start to think a little bit deeper, what is the possibility of other ailments having an emotional blueprint attached to them? Right? So this concept fascinated me, and this is something that I've been delving into for so many years, and quite passionately so, to try and learn and understand why also is it that one person in Australia that has arthritis in their left hand and someone who's in Canada who has arthritis in their left hand, they have the same trauma triggers. They feel the same way each in their lives, irrespective of their religious beliefs, culture, diet. It doesn't matter. It's how they feel. And this speaks incredible volumes. And as I was teaching, across the world in 43 countries over the past 16 years, and, working with over 7,000 clients and documenting my cases, I mean, one of the 21 books that I wrote was Metaphysical Anatomy, Volume 1. And the subheading title is Your Body is Talking, Are You Listening? And I wrote this book as I was working with all these clients, because I started to notice similarities between these people who have never met in different
Mm-hmm.
continents. And I thought, this is amazing. This is amazing. It's incredible. How's that even possible? And so the more I started documenting this information, the more and more I just started to see the similarities piling up. And then I wrote this as a manual for my students to work and use during their classes. And someone once just said, why don't you publish it as a book? And I thought, oh, that's a great idea. Why not? So,
Mm-hmm.
if you had to tell me many, many, many years ago that I would be an author today, I would have laughed at you. I would never believe that. That was not even the intention of where I was aiming to move towards. But it's like the work just found me, and I just continue to dive deeper into it, just unraveling this mysterious, powerful connection between emotions and certain elements that comes forward. So this is one of my pivotal moments that I continue to document to this day. To this day.
That makes so much sense of it. So, like as you said, you have helped thousands release trauma through metaphysical anatomy, and that's really remarkable. So, what makes this method distinct from traditional therapy or coaching?
So that's a really great question. So what we do in this work is this. So in traditional therapy, what you would look at is more verbal therapy. You dive a little bit into the subconscious mind. Maybe there's
Mm.
hypnosis, meditation that's involved, and of course we absolutely do that as well. But I blend a little bit more somatic work. We tap a little bit more into the nervous system as well, and we work with bilateral in between as well. And so what's really powerful about this is there's not a lot of cognitive memories when we start to look at the nervous system, right? So many trauma points already starts to happen in our life before the age of 3, and we don't really have memories before the age of 3, and that's because the hippocampus and the amygdala, all of this is still developing, especially the hippocampus, which is our emotional brain. So everything during these moments and times is very visceral, imprinted nervous system experiences. It's very survival responses. And so how do we access these memories that's anchored into the nervous system if it's not something that we necessarily always can regress back to as per se a memory? So we need to learn how to understand the memory of the body, how the body stores memories in different ways, not just cognitively, but throughout different parts of the body as well, right? So that's where it gets really interesting. Um, Sometimes what is known as anchoring. Say, for example, you're really upset and someone pushes you against your arm as a joke and you didn't think it was funny. That moment where that person touched you, for example, on your arm can actually create an imprint, what I call an imprint memory. So your body recognizes and associates that touch and that pressure with that specific area, for example, on the arm. So if someone in future touches you in that same area, it might just ever so slightly vaguely trigger some of the emotions that you had on that day when you were upset. Right. So this is just another way of showing how the body can store memories, not necessarily as a direct conscious memory, but rather as a very visceral, somatic, physiological memory. So, this is where my work is a little bit different. We absolutely cover the verbal part. We talk, we discuss, certain memories, what do you remember? How much do you remember? But in my work, it's not important for you to have actual memories of the past in order to heal. In most cases, you don't even need to talk about it, and you don't need to relive the trauma either. So for me, it's one of my highest values and um how can I say moral values is to keep
Mhm.
people in their window of tolerance when they heal, because when people come to you, they are already or incredibly vulnerable. Some of them are very traumatized, and people just need a lot of love. They just need a lot of gentleness. And so I designed this technique specifically to hold people in very vulnerable moments and stages in their lives as well. I mean, it's absolutely for everyone, whether it's a fear or whether you're going through a divorce, whether you're going through bereavement, or it was a car accident or a severe traumatic incident. The technique will hold you and carry you to exactly where it is that you need to be. And so it's very important for me that a therapy, and that's why mine's designed the way that is it encapsulates all the different ways that the body can store trauma, which is not just cognitively, but throughout what I call the emotional body as well.
Mm-hmm. That's
Yeah.
such a clear and insightful, and it really like highlights how metaphysical anatomy offers a unique approach. And I really appreciate that how you have made the distinction so accessible, especially for those who might not have specially like realized that healing can happen gently without having to like relieve or analyze every painful moment. It's a
Mm,
perspective that sets this method apart.
exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. And just to briefly also share what happened with me as an example, and one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about not having to relive trauma in order to heal it, is what we have is what's called neuroplasticity. And we always learn about neuroplasticity as being this really great positive experience. We can rewire the brain, we can relearn habits, unlearn habits, and so forth, right? So there's always this positive spin on it. But what people don't realize is that this can actually flip to the dark negative side, right? So if you have a traumatic experience and you go and you relive the trauma in order now to heal it, if the practitioner doesn't know what they're doing, if they're not well trained and they cannot successfully support you out of that traumatic moment and complete the trauma cycle, you can actually reinforce the trauma, which actually means that you reinforce the neural pathways where this trauma is being stored, if not develop even new ones, right? Because a certain amount of stress factor is needed in order for new neural pathways to start to develop and grow. So depending on how traumatic or re-traumatizing the event can be, this can actually be a whole new traumatic event that is now actually almost like layered into the initial event that you had. So this is
Mm-hmm.
why it's, for me, so incredibly important that whatever it is that you do, it shouldn't hurt. It's not supposed to be traumatic. So for me, we keep people in the window of tolerance. Yes, of course, there's sometimes tears, sometimes there's anger, sometimes there's frustration, but it's never to the point where it's actually traumatizing for that person. And that is vital. It's vital for a successful healing session. There's so many therapies out there where people are not properly trained either, and then they go in and they try to help people with quite serious conditions. So, there's a lot of fine lines that needs to be understood, fine combed, and investigated and trained in really, really well. And that's why this technique, I was so incredibly careful and thorough over the years developing it to make it as effective, as deep,
Mm-hmm.
and as safe as possible as well. And I even have psychologists, psychiatrists, I have doctors using it. I have, just the average person who wants to improve their quality of life using it. Is designed so that people can heal themselves. They don't need to go to a practitioner. They don't need the meta psychology coaching practitioner. They can do it on themselves. So I designed the technique to be absolutely empower people, whether they want to be a practitioner or they want to be their own best healing practitioner. So, and I feel that we've really nailed down that goal.
Mm-hmm. That really makes sense of it. So, like, is it something anyone can lean or tune into, or does it require deep, intrusive training?
So first of all, the training, I mean, if for anyone that would be interested, let's say the level 1 course, the trauma decoded, that one is 2 days. And there you learn very practical, powerful, impactful tools that you can do on a session for yourself or for someone else. And of course, in the course, we explain and teach what you can and cannot do, who you can and cannot work with. So there's very clear guidelines to make sure that it's ethical and supportive for everyone else involved. But just a simple 2-day training can already create incredible impact in someone's life. I mean, we've had people address quite tough conditions that they themselves helped themselves through and reported very positive results. And what we also do is we have what's called healing swaps. So anyone that's done the level 1 course, we have a WhatsApp group and a support system, so they can actually reach out and say, hey, is anyone else available for a healing swap? I have something coming up, and then I can do a healing swap for you. So it's actually a very affordable system as well, right? So it's you can be supported, and I'm there, and we have many other practitioners, trained practitioners also in the application to support each other and one another. So it's actually a really beautiful community that's been established because of this as well. So for people always think, oh my goodness, I don't have money for therapy. Well, that's okay. You can do a healing swap with someone, right? So where you help someone and then they help you. It works really well.
Mm-hmm. That's like really encouraging to hear, Dr. But it's I feel that it's really empowering to know that this kind of self-awareness and connection to the body, it isn't limited to only those with like special intuitive gifts, but can actually be cultivated by anyone through the right guidance and practice, as you said.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I've had people come to me as young as 19 years old, and they look at me and they say, David, I don't know what intuition really is. I don't know if I can connect to it. And then they walk out just completely shocked and surprised by how well they did. It's not something that you really need to learn how to do. It's rather remember how to do it. There's so much beautiful, powerful capacities and healing, natural healing capacities that the body has that we just need to relearn. How do we tap back into that again? How do we utilize it again? Under which circumstances do we utilize it, and so forth, right? So it's really just about moving and going back to our blueprint, because the body has its own natural healing trauma cycles. And we need to start to learn to recognize what these cycles are, because our inability to recognize a trauma cycle, for example, can actually perpetuate a problem. People don't realize that crying is actually a trauma cycle trying to complete itself. But how many of us have associated negative emotions and feelings with crying, right? People feel shameful. They feel embarrassed when they cry. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, you should be happy your body's finally releasing a lot of pent up stress. There's a lot of toxins and cortisol being released through the tears. And when we cry, the way that we breathe through crying is actually specifically designed to regulate the autonomic nervous system. So if we suppress our ability or need to cry, you're actually suppressing your body's natural capacity in that moment to try to release that discharged stress and energy. There's just a very simple explanation. And then sometimes I have so many students coming to me and they say, Evette, but I cry so much and I still don't feel better. And then I ask them, do you feel safe when you cry? And then they said, no. And I said, exactly. The body will not and cannot heal if it doesn't feel safe, especially if it doesn't feel safe with the method being applied, including its own natural healing abilities, such as crying. Because when we cry and we have trauma and shame associated with crying, the act of crying triggers in the subconscious mind these negative associations. And then what comes up when we cry? We are flooded with shame. We don't realize it, but we feel flooded with shame. When you cry, suddenly you cover your face, or you want to bury your face in your t-shirt, or suddenly you want to run away into a corner or lock yourself up in the bathroom. There's so much shame associated with it. And often it's even our response to someone when they cry. We're in shock and we think, oh my God, what is wrong? We should actually be saying and asking, wow, what is going right finally? It's not a bad thing to cry. It is healthy. It's good. You're meant to cry if there's something that's distressing and the body needs to let it go.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an example right there.
That was a great example of it, and I mean, like that's gonna surely resonate with all the listeners out there. So, has science started to catch up with what you have known intuitively for years?
This is a really great question. I think
Mm-hmm.
so. One thing that became quite evident in 2009 when I was working, I noticed people would spontaneously start to regress to the time when they were in their mother's womb. And I thought, how is it possible for people to have these memories? Is it the nervous system remembering it? How are they remembering what the mother could have felt like? There was no necessarily clear evidence of it. And then I was researching one day, and then I finally found research that showed that the protein cells, which is part of a bigger nucleus in the lining of the of the placenta in the mother's womb, which is pregnant with the child, records the mother's stress. And then on top of that, cortisol negatively affects the placenta in itself. So if the mother is highly stressed, that cortisol actually damages the placenta. Now, why is this so significant? The placenta is the startup of your being. That placenta holds also instructions for how you should develop, how your heart should develop, your nervous system, your organs. And this very platform is being damaged by cortisol. So this is something that's now starting to come up, which something that I have noticed, including my practitioners that I've trained, noticed with their clients as well worldwide, right? We were not talking to each other that we were noticing this. And, we started talking a bit more and more during, our online Zoom meetings and so forth. And it became more evident that, oh my goodness, we are all
Mm-hmm.
experiencing this. This is fascinating. So that's
Exactly.
definitely one area that's starting to open up now. So I'm thrilled about it. I love to see where this is going to go.
Mm-hmm. It's it's a bold stance, but an important one, I must say. But especially now when more people are craving healing that goes deeper than diagnosis.
That's very true. That's absolutely very true because sometimes even a diagnosis doesn't give them an actual answer, right? How many
Mm-hmm.
people walk out of a doctor's office and the doctor tells them it's all in your head, but they're sitting there with a life-threatening condition, and it's like it's not very comforting, is it? Right? So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so it's the it's a tough I mean it's a really tough area because there's a lot of doctors that's opening up to this, that's realizing this, that's seeing this. And then there's a lot of doctors that's still grappling with, I don't know. I don't know if this can be true. So we still have people that are not fully open to this quite yet.
Absolutely, I completely agree with that. Dr. Evette Rose, you taught us that the body doesn't lie. It remembers, protects, and sometimes cries out when the heart has stayed silent for too long. So, listeners, this conversation is your reminder that healing is layered, soulful, and possible. So, if something stirred in you today, follow it. Share this episode, explore Evette's work, and remember your body is not broken, it's brilliantly guiding you back home. Stay sparked, stay curious, and stay tender with your